What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Buzz Beat. We are live for the 2024 NBA Draft. Thanks to all of you who are joining us on YouTube, X Video, or anybody that is listening to us the day after on the podcast version. We are recapping the Hornets draft pick. We are 2 picks into the NBA draft, with Richie going to Atlanta and Sar going to Washington with the Rockets on the clock. This is Richie. I'll be joined by Brian today. Dylan, Darian should be joining us a little bit later, and I think we're going to call Spencer as well to get his reaction to the Hornets pick here. As always, as we get into this, leave us a comment or two or questions in the chat, and we can get to those if we find time there. Lastly, there will be a trivia, which I will display on the screen somewhat soon into the broadcast. And if you guys get it correct, the first person to get it correct, I will give 6 months free, ad-free listening and early access through BuzzBeat Plus. And it looks like Darian is joining us here. We'll bring him on. Darian, since you just jumped in, how's it going?
It's going good. Sorry, I was a little late. Baby bath times are unpredictable. So, but I'm happy to be here. Not surprised by the first 2 picks. So, it looks like as of right now, everything's according to plan. Draft starts here, though.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about pre-recording. Brian, what is your excitement level for this draft, considering the draft class and everything that entails?
Before I jump into that, it does look like we'll see what ends up happening. But according to Shams, Houston is going with Kentucky guard Reed Shepherd at 3. No real surprises yet, but that's I think if Houston keeps that pick, Shepherd certainly made sense to be the guy there. I'm pretty excited. Like overall, it's good to after a months of preparing for this. It's nice to have it finally here. And in the Hornets, corner of the universe, it's a great opportunity. The draft is the best tool this team has, and it's a good opportunity to add another players to the young, nucleus with Melo Ball and Brandon Miller. And I do think coming into this draft after like the success of Miller last year does sort of like ease, I think, a little bit of the tension too, just because, they do have they've got multiple, really talented, young, enticing players on the roster that they can build around. So even though they dropped in the lottery, I think there should be plenty of excitement for this team heading into this night. And overall, like it's a great night in the league and an important, team building moment. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped.
Dylan, thanks for joining us again for the second straight year. How are you feeling about tonight?
Yeah, I feel good. I always love the draft. It's good to celebrate like this talent that we have coming into the league. It's always fun to see, kind of pair a player with a team, see, what works well, what maybe doesn't, what, has the potential to be something pretty special as we, have the first 3 picks off the board already. It's pretty chalk so far. And, considering how we've talked about this draft class previously being so unpredictable, it's been chalk, which is, interesting. We had Sar second, Richie first, Shepherd third. So, we'll see what San Antonio does here with the 4th pick. But, I'm excited from the Hornets' perspective. It feels like we don't really know what we're going to do. And we're kind of almost a pivot point in this draft class compared to, maybe like one of those top 3 teams that did go chalk. So I'm excited. I'm happy to be here with you guys. Happy to be watching the draft today. It's felt like it's, every draft cycle feels like it goes on forever and ever. So I'm glad to finally be here. And yeah.
It is interesting to see what happens at the 6th pick and see who falls to the Hornets, because I think if there are certain players that get to the Hornets position, like Donovan Clingan, like I think that could open up some avenues for some trade back scenarios for Charlotte, or even if Clingan falls to 5, like I feel like Detroit will also get involved in that type of stuff. We do have a comment here in the video from Jason. It's going to be Salon with the 6th pick, isn't it? So there was some kind of like pre-draft smoke here from Kristen Peak, where she posted that the Hornets would be targeting Salon out of France, the 18-year-old? Like, he's a young guy.
Yeah, 18.
My first thought was like, why is this news coming out at 4 p.m.? Why? How could the Hornets, be targeting a guy that has 5 guys that go ahead of him? And is this really just some kind of plan for the Hornets to get a specific team to trade up? So I don't know what you guys feel about him as a prospect. We really didn't talk too much about him on our podcast. And then what do you think about that news that came out? Like, do you think the Hornets will actually draft him at number 6?
I don't think he's the guy at 6. I don't. That was interesting reporting for sure from a very good draft analyst in Kristen Peak. In theory, he like kind of fits, right? Because he's young. He can he shot it pretty well. So there are reasons I think to buy his shot long term. And he's a tall, stretch forward. And in theory, that's a guy that can fit with basically any team. But certainly you can piece that person around LaMelo and Brandon Miller. He's a good cutter. He hits the offensive glass from the corner. He can run the floor in transition. And there's some defense. He's got some stuff to clean up on the defensive side of the floor, but there's some definite upside. And if you watch him play, like I think he measured, he was, 6'9", 6'10". But he kind of like looks and plays larger than that. So I do like some of the him as an archetype is interesting and a fit. He's a good prospect. 6 is a bit of a reach though, I would say, for Salon. So again, I mentioned him very briefly in the last pod we did before the draft, but that was sort of just like doing due diligence, not really thinking that he would actually be the target for Charlotte at 6. So I guess crazier things have happened, but I would be pretty surprised if he's the pick.
Hey, real quick, guys, we've got Spencer on the phone here. Spencer, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. We were just talking about the Salon rumors that came out prior to the draft here, and whether or not you thought that was kind of some kind of a smokescreen, or do you think that's a target of the Hornets? Now, you're coming off the golf course, correct? Or at least you golfed earlier today?
I am. So I'm probably not the best source of information, whether that's a smokescreen or not. But yes, it was a beautiful day down here in Kill Island, South Carolina. My guess would be yes, it is, but that's just my guess. We'll see what happens. I'm certainly disappointed to see Reed go off the board here. I really, really, really wanted him for Charlotte, and was very interested in the rumors that they might trade up, go get him. I mean, I guess that's not technically off the table at this point, but yeah, I would lean towards that's probably a smokescreen. I think Connect will be the pick if he's there.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like an obvious name. Dylan, what are your thoughts on Salon? Because you didn't have him in your like top 7, big board that we have displayed here on the bottom of our screen.
Yeah, so he's not exactly the type of player that, I think a team would be interested in if they don't work him out, Yeah. And I didn't see any buzz with the Hornets like working out him specifically. And if they didn't and they still decided to draft him 6th overall, I have some concerns about their process, like I could maybe understand not working out a player if he's like a Dalton Connect, where he is like a 5th-year senior, where it's a lot easier to project what he's going to be versus a Salon who's like a raw forward who, he's shown flashes of skill, a lot of athleticism there. He's a very exciting player, but you couldn't convince me that he's worth the 6th overall pick, especially if you're not actually going through the process, working him out, doing a lot of the things that you should do if you're going to reach on a player at 6th overall, according to consensus at least. But I'm not super high on him. I prefer him to, some other players. I do prefer him to Connect because I think he's a little bit more of an upside play. But, at the end of the day, like, he's just not a player I would expect to see called at 6th overall. That report very much read to me as though, they were trying to get the Spurs to select him at 4th overall, which the pick is in right now. They did not do that. So it's just like, I don't know. I I would be very, very shocked if that report came to fruition.
And should be noted, Steph Castle of UConn is off the board to San Antonio at pick 4. So one of the better guard point of attack defenders in the class, had a great season. UConn this year, good cutter, winning player for sure. And we'll see what happens with the jump shot. But a guy that definitely can play with the ball some, can slash, can get downhill, does a nice job making, live ball passing reads. But so it's an interesting pick for San Antonio. But I think it makes a lot of sense for San Antonio as well.
Go ahead, Spencer.
Can I just say real quick? I'm like pretty. I'm happy that Castle's off the board. Not that I don't think Castle would have been a good fit in Charlotte, or like that I don't like him as a prospect, but there's just some part, like his offensive game makes me super nervous, super nervous. And I just don't know that it would be the best fit with Charlotte right now in the direction they're going. So, like, I would have been fine with him there, but I'm kind of happy he's off the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some players in this draft that just have some offensive concerns, and maybe that's why you lean Dalton Connect, Spencer. But like even like Buzelis, the guy that I favor and kind of lean towards at number 6, like he has some offensive concerns when it comes to shooting the ball and just his overall strength. The one thing about Castle that I feel like me just didn't give enough credit to was just the fact that he can come on the next level and bring that defensive energy. He doesn't get hung up on screens. He's a very physical player on both ends of the court. So offensively, yes, you're not going to get much out of that guy, especially early on in his career, unless it's through transition or off of cuts. Like that's where you're going to get your bang for your buck out of Castle. So there's other things that you would like to add to his arsenal for Castle's offensive game, but at least he did have that defensive presence, something that the Hornets would have sorely needed in any kind of situation.
Yeah.
I think not that Castle can't get there. It's not that he can't get there offensively. I just the Hornets situation right now makes me nervous about his progression getting there, right? So it's one of those fit things versus what I actually think about the prospect.
Yeah, I think there are reasons to, I think, be like a little optimistic about the offense coming along. Like he showed touch from the free throw line, touch to the mid range. And when he actually shot with some confidence this year, like in games, you'd see him, hit shots coming off handoffs and relocations. He's like, I mean, he's a poor 3-point shooter, but there were times where I was just happy when he would like get shots in the air, as opposed to like when he would catch and think about whether he wanted to shoot or not. And then, UConn would have to flow into some other, dribble handoff action or whatever. So there's a ways to go, but certainly putting his defensive, perimeter impact with Wembanyama could potentially be, bear some fruit. And he's a very good on-ball defender. He's not like as sticky, I think, as like Devin Carter out of Providence. And I think he's a guy that like you can beat with rejections and stuff like that. He wasn't like, totally just like unbeatable one-on-one guarding the ball this year, but very, very good on that end. And he also has like the Marcus Smart, guard, defensive playmaker, components to his game too. So really nice prospect, but like I do feel sort of like I do understand the concerns with the shot. And I think a lot of people in Hornets land are a little more, just MKG is like in the past, but like, forever front of brain. I feel like with I remember having these conversations 4 years ago about Isaac Okoro, who's like turned into a nice NBA player, but another guy that like still is limited by the fact that he, teams are going to guard him to shoot threes in the playoffs. But it's turned into, he's going to be a second contract guy. So he's done enough, I think.
I think another thing with Castle specifically, similar to what Brian and Spencer were saying about his fit maybe with the Hornets, I think going to the Spurs, his biggest thing I think you see from going from high school to college is his adaptability. He was doing a completely different role at UConn than he did in high school. And being with the Spurs, you got Wemby. And as we know, NBA teams can change the salary cap however they want when it comes to trading players. But you pay Keldon Johnson, you pay Devin Vassell, you just need a guy to kind of come in and just adapt to what you already have. Now, granted, like I said, those guys, if they want them to go, they'll find a way to trade them. But just for the sake of conversation, you just need someone to kind of come in and fit with what they already have. And I mean, off the top of my head, he's probably the best fit for them to be able to not disrupt what they already have, but also, kind of help the team go to the next level.
I mean, when you go Castle, Vassell, Wembanyama on the back line, and
Sohan too.
Like those two wing defenders with Wembanyama behind them in 2 or 3 years, that's the best in the league, probably.
And Jeremy Sohan too, like still in the mix.
I forgot about Sohan.
Yeah.
I think that with Castle in particular, like the Spurs, he's such a Greg Popovich player, like absolutely 100%, like fits the mold in terms of what they do. I liked his fit alongside LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller. I thought that he would have been a great complementary piece, but again, like you're having to rely on him developing as a shooter. But I really liked his, like for lack of a better term, dirty work skills, all of the little things that he could do. I think he was a really good cutter. I think that, he found ways to impact the game offensively, even if he wasn't shooting the ball the best. And defensively, obviously, he did whatever, he was asked to. And I think that would have worked well in Charlotte. He wouldn't have been the guy that I probably pick. I think that there's, maybe better players available. Like I do really like Matas Buzelis. I really like Devin Carter. I think that Devin Carter is about as good of a fit as we can get. Did we get a trade or did they
no pick 5? Yeah, Ron Holland. This was the guy.
Wow.
This was the guy I wanted Charlotte. This was Holland was my guy. There was someone in the comments a little bit ago that was asking if there was any Holland love on here. Charlie Brantley, definitely some Holland love on here. It's really he's gonna have to work on the shot and the decision making. If that doesn't hit, you could see him bust out. But I think he's the best athlete in the draft. He's one of the better wing defenders in the draft. He's one of the best downhill drivers in the draft. There are numbers to support that as well. So I was very much in on Holland. He's also quite young. So interesting pick for him being lumped into Detroit. It's like
I don't love the fit.
Whoa, Ivy,
you have Thompson. Yeah, it's like
it's boy. Well,
unless I guess this is like one of those. I would assume they're going to do something else, right? Like they have to do something else with that roster if they. Because I just don't see Detroit trying to be bad again, unless maybe they're saying, "Hey, well, next year 2025 draft." But this is, I don't know. I know as good as I think Ron Holland is, he was a project, and considering what Detroit has going on, I just don't know if they were ready for it. But maybe it's a sign of someone else, on the roster potentially leaving, or I don't know what the case may be.
I will say I'm glad to see that Holland did not fall out of the. I mean, there was some mocks where he was landing back end of the lottery. That to me was far too extreme.
Yeah.
So for him to go top 5 makes a lot of sense. But Detroit is a weird fit. Who knows? Hornets are on the clock now. Donovan Clingan is still available. Maybe this does become a trade back scenario. Yes. Richie, you and I were talking about this before we hopped on tonight too. So maybe there's a little bit of wheeling and dealing going on here. For
a lot of calls going on right now. Got to be right. Yeah. And then I would also just quickly make the case because his stock's been all over the place. But Topics to me, I just love the idea of him next to LaMelo Ball. I'm just gonna leave it there.
He could end up being the best player in this draft. That I do believe in that, that reality.
And together they'll play 82 games, right? Together.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
As in 82, do you mean 42? Yeah.
I need to get my trivia question out here in a second. I know that this is kind of like a point where the Hornets are about to select or about to trade, but I wanted to put this out there for all our listeners, our viewers here on YouTube. Oh, sorry. So barring some trade, the Hornets also have the 42nd selection in this year's draft. That is the only.
We traded back?
Yeah, we traded back. So apparently Memphis is moving up to number 6. Hornets are
9.
9. Yeah.
Hold on. Woj is reporting another team is working to move up and select Klingon. That's according to him, that's Portland right now, too.
So Jake Fisher said Charlotte's trading back from 6 to 9 with Memphis.
To 6 to 9. Yep.
Oh, man. I don't know. Maybe it's a 3-team trade.
Yeah, probably. It could be.
Mm-hmm.
Because as Portland doesn't necessarily need a big, but I mean, obviously they probably would want one that fits their timeline.
It makes sense. No.
So
they're a little guard heavy, you know. It makes
maybe it's
sense.
like a bidding war type of thing. They're both trying to move up.
I don't hate it. I mean, let's see how things shake out.
I want to see the return. Yeah.
I mean, for me personally,
for
players that I like for the Hornets, I mean, I think all of them just about are, well, obviously outside of a couple other guys, but a majority of them are available. So I can completely see why we would trade back. But yeah, I definitely need to see what the return was.
You know, the refreshing part about this is somebody actually answers the phone in Charlotte now. So when it rings, like somebody picks it up and answers it and is like, all right, what do you have to say? Yeah, because Mitch Kupchak did not do that very often. So this is wheeling and dealing. This is good. It might end up not good. It probably ends up pretty good. I mean, we'll see what else, Charlotte gets with this. But this screams to me we're moving back for either Toppage or Connect, right?
Yeah.
I would also Cody Williams.
Carter.
Cody Williams, Devin
Cody,
Carter. Yeah. I think there are a few names. Cam in the chat is saying Armando Baycott.
Please.
You know the old regime might be looking at Harrison Ingram at pick 9, a little hybrid forward action there. But no, I think those days are gone. But yeah, very, very interesting maneuver here for Charlotte, and
it's good. Like maneuvering like this when you've got a valuable player on the board, rather than reaching on somebody that might be there in like 1 or 3 picks, I think that's good asset management. Like you could take like a guy like Connect right here, or if it's Portland that wants to move up, get Klingon, you could get like 2 second-round picks, still get the guy that you want. I still haven't seen the trade details if you guys have, but
no,
I'm looking, but I don't see them.
I mean, we'll see when we get them. They completely paused the timer on our pick. I don't know if you guys saw that, but
yeah, it just says round 1.
It just says round 1 and then our logo. But I'm like, it'll most likely be Klingon right here, assuming we do trade back. We wouldn't have heard anything if
Klingon.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see Donovan Klingon in a Hornets hat. What's going to be y'all's favorite memory of the Donovan Klingon era?
Is it going to be another thing where it's like we get another one of those? I don't know if you guys saw the Shea Gilgeous-Alexander with the Hornets hat on today, but I saw that. You think it's going to be another situation like that?
I don't know. I do like Klingon. He's, I think, the best defensive prospect in the class. And I do like some of the 5-out initiation stuff he can do. I think he's pretty mobile. Obviously the rim protection is quite good, but I would have been, he's a great prospect. It was hard to get super excited about him. And I don't know if that's because he's, a center who doesn't offer stretch really, or, I'm not entirely sure, or because he's just not much of a scorer in general, but great prospect. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to be one that the Hornets have to. I'm not too worried about them having to live that one down of the.
Yeah, I'm not huge on Klingon, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's fine.
I get the appeal, especially in this draft class. I just for me, there's really 2 archetypes that it's hard for me to get behind in the early lottery, and a center like Klingon is just, I feel like that skill set is just something that you're able to find later on in the draft. It's something that you can, it's not as valuable as it maybe once was. I would also say that, the type of skill set that Connect brings is also that type of, something that you could maybe find in the late teens in a draft, rather than maybe having to select him in the early mid lottery. But, we'll see. I'm interested to see what this return is, kind of how creative they end up getting, because I still haven't seen anything on the trade, and there's about 90 seconds left on the clock. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said bidding war, and then it's kind of then it just stopped. So
I hope so.
Yeah. Man.
On Klingon, I would say he reminds me of a because I thought about this a lot. Obviously, he's been all over the draft board in mock draft.
Whoa.
But we're getting something.
Salon.
They actually did it.
They were real.
Wow.
Those were for real. As I was trying to get my thought out.
Wait,
what I was going to say is Klingon is a very, 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 very poor man's Brooke Lopez to me. Yeah, and obviously not as big as Brooke. But anyways, we have something else to talk about now.
So what's the deal, guys? Because I don't have Twitter pulled up.
It's Tijol soon, number 6.
I'm hoping it can still be a trade though, right? Or is it like
Jake Fisher said we're staying at 6.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Charlotte selected Saloon probably for Memphis. I'm guessing, right?
It doesn't look that way. It doesn't.
I think we kept him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
According to Woj, they're keeping it. Wow.
That's a choice.
Wow, that is a choice. Man,
it is a choice.
Interesting.
What I'll say is, like, if you want an upside, you got it.
I'll say that to me, this shows that those rumors of they're willing to take on contracts to kind of go backwards before they go forward. This is 100% that.
For sure.
This is the definition of that. If anything, it proves that. So I don't think we're keeping Miles Bridges. I think a couple other guys maybe off the team.
Yep.
That's how I see it. That's the only way you draft him is that you're ready to take steps back before you go forward. That's the only way I see it.
Yeah.
I have to question the process on this because I didn't hear him work out unless it was like they really kept that under wraps. And
pretty sure he did not work out.
Yeah. Like I didn't see anything about that. He's the type of player that you would want to work out. You know, I said that earlier. But I mean, if they really believed in him, I mean, I guess so. I think the value is a little bit questionable here. I still prefer him to connect, actually, but it's
he's
an
like
upside,
5 years younger than Connect too.
A whole rookie contract.
Like,
a whole rookie. You know, like
he won't turn 19 until August. Like he's 18. He's gonna be 18 for like almost 2 more months, basically. Look, he was productive in the French league this year with Cloette. You know, 50 plus games, almost 10 points per game. You know, 32% from deep. On almost 4.5 attempts per game, 75% from the line, 2.5% steal rate, shot 64% at the rim, 6'9" without shoes at the combine, 217 pounds, 9'2" standing reach. So, and, you know, he's shown a willingness to play without the ball, you know, come off flare screens, come off down screens, relocate, you know, cut, come off back screens for lobs. It's going to take some time though, obviously. And for whatever it's worth too, we can get into more Salon if we want, but I think like ultimately he's really young. He's very tall. There's some upside on both offense and defense. He's got a good motor and he's shown some fluidity as a mover too. So I think if you can clean up that release, if you speed it up, you know, maybe you've got like, you know, your stretch 4 or whatever of the future, but it's going to take some time. And I'm a little surprised by this pick, to say the least, especially with some of the other names, you know, still on the board, and the possibility of being able to move off if you wanted Salon, like why couldn't you have traded back and then scooped him out?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. He would have been there at 9. I promise you. I promise you he would have been there.
I just got a text from a friend. He's like, "Is this good or bad?" And like, it really is just like,
yes,
you know,
that's the answer.
Yes,
it's so hard.
Fell apart somewhere. You would imagine. I would say this. You know, this goes. You know, Richie, the episode we had a few weeks ago, like this goes the opposite direction of what I thought maybe this front office and new coaching staff, like all this turnover, what I thought their direction would be. You know, I thought it would be play it safe. Let's get a winner in here immediately, a plug and play. This is the exact opposite of that. And not that it's not a good pick, but it's a big, big swing. A big swing for a head coach and a GM that are both under the age of 40. And, you know, not that it's bad, but this is just a very interesting direction for the first big decision you make in that kind of situation. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah. it has to be said, just because I feel like this should get tacked on with any like discussion with the Hornets. They could, if they were that they owe a 2025 first round pick to San Antonio. I think that's unlikely to convey because it's lottery protected. So I think you're doing things to sort of like make sure you keep that pick. And they've got +2 picks in the future too because of the transactions at the deadline. So in a very enticing, potentially top 5 pick in 2025, which could turn into another franchisee type player. Even if you don't get Flag at 1, there's still Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. There's some other guys that are looming as potential, Common Malawach, who's at Duke. So, there's another big guy. So I don't know, but I just think that's important to mention that like they clearly are taking a multi-year look at this thing. And it's Salon's reach, but that's at least refreshing to see a little bit more patient approach.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Do you guys think this means anything, just the overall pick, taking such a raw prospect? Do you guys think it means anything in terms of Miles Bridges' free agency?
Yeah, I think he's gone, but I don't think they picked him to be the replacement. I think they're trying to, like I said, go backwards. And I think that's kind of what the idea is, to be honest.
I agree for what it's worth, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where they're going because I just don't – that's the only other option, at least for me, that's the only other option I could think of.
And the Hornets can go backwards is what you're saying. We can go even farther back. Is that what you're saying?
That's unfortunate. I mean, as unfortunate as it is.
Yeah. Even when you're in the cellar, you can start digging a trench. You know what I mean? Like you can start just knocking away at the floor there. But yeah, surprising pick for sure. And honestly, like a guy I've seen.
Bring up if I can real quick. I think this is another sign that the Hornets, this new ownership group and front office is not married to LaMelo Ball. I would bring that up as well. You have a max player on your roster right now, and this is part of the reason that I thought Connect would be a great pick or somebody that you can plug and play immediately. And you're paying somebody $250 million over 5 years, and you just made a pick that basically we're not going to see this guy for like 2 seasons. He probably won't even be in a Hornets uniform next year. So I don't know. I just would. I know people don't want to hear that. I just don't get the sense that this new ownership group is really convicted with LaMelo Ball moving forward.
It remains to be seen. And like he could come out this season and just be on fire at the start. Like that could also change pretty quickly. I see the point, and like, if they were ever going to do a full rebuild, like we've talked about this dozens of times now, but it's like push the button that you would push for that is like you trade LaMelo and try to get 5 first-round picks. You try to it would be the biggest trade that the Hornets have ever made as a franchise, probably. So I suppose that option is always, if not on the table, it's certainly like not necessarily out of reach either. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited, obviously, to see LaMelo and Brandon Miller play together for hopefully a full season.
That's all I'm trying to get to is just can I get Brandon Miller, LaMelo, and Mark Williams on the court at the same time, or at least give me 30 games at minimum.
Please.
I am glad that Mark Williams was not traded to Houston today. Yeah. That is for sure. I was having trouble buying those rumors earlier, or that reporting, I should say, from The Athletic. But I just need to get that guy healthy and get him on the floor because he's good. He's a difference maker. And I'd really like to see him have time underneath this new coaching staff headed up by Charles Lee. I think that's he's a guy that I'm certainly circling for the next 2 seasons or so.
Go ahead. I was going to say one thing I will say is that they've been harping on how this coaching staff is a very developmental coaching staff and that, they're going to develop all these players. So that's another spin, and that's just me trying to be positive that you could put on it. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it shows that they have faith in the coaching staff to make this work, because that was one of the biggest selling points, was that all these coaches have a good history of developing players to where they are now. So that's the only thing else I could think of.
Kind of going off of the direction of the team based off of the Salon pick, and I know it's kind of a lot to base off of a single draft pick. I wonder whether we're going to see a little bit more trade action later in the draft if they decide they want to maybe take on some salary with their open cap space for maybe one of these later picks, like in the late teens, 20s, something like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if they really are committed to a player like that in like the top 6, you know, especially with guys like LaMelo, with Brandon Miller, I really do think it would be smart to maybe take that course of action rather than, you know, we sign like win now players or something like that. I think it would be smart to, you know, maximize the assets that we could potentially add.
There's a comment here in the chat which says, I would rather have had Modest Buzelis and didn't love Connect as a prospect. But if they were going to go upside, I feel like Buzelis still is an upside swing too. Not to the point to where he's so raw that you just don't know what you're getting in the first year. But what do you think made this pick Saloon over Buzelis? Or do you guys have no idea? Because there must have been something that we just weren't privy to.
So, I mean, what is the age difference between them? Like a year?
Yeah. Basically a year, essentially.
It's like, so what I'm not sure if I should say this, but I was told by somebody today that Buzelis didn't have a good workout in Charlotte.
Okay. And yes, Buzelis is actually 14 months older than Salon too. So there is, I mean, it's not any norm. He's still just 19. He's obviously incredibly young, but that is a bit of an age difference. I guess, you know, Ignite was kind of a mess this season. I don't think that was like Buzelis' fault, nor do I think it was like Ron Holland's fault. And I think those guys got, you know, dinged a little bit for that. Although, you know, Holland still ends up in the top 5 of the draft here. You know, Salon shot it better in a good pro league this year, you know, and like played a different role. You know, Buzelis was, you know, asked to do a little bit more from a creation standpoint for Ignite. And Salon was a little bit more, you know, play off the catch, you know, be a cutter, hit the glass, spot up, pick and pops, you know, come off flares, that type of stuff, get in transition. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's like a shooting upside play that is part of this. Like he's younger, and as of right now, he probably profiles a little bit as like a better shooter. So maybe that's part of it. Buzelis is certainly like better with the basketball in his hands and like as a driver and stuff like that. At least from my standpoint. But I don't know. I'm excited to do even more of like a dive on Salon. You know, basically like as soon as we sign off tonight, I'll try to find what I can. Yeah, I've seen some. I actually watched more Risa Shea this year, but I've seen some of him, and I'm looking forward to putting in a little bit more time on that.
A few years ago, like the Bulls took Patrick Williams 4th overall, and not many people really expected that one. And so they didn't really have much of a reaction to it. Like, it's just not a player that they had really considered. And that's kind of my reaction to this is like, he's not really somebody that I thought was even going to be in contention. Even after that report came out, I just thought that was smoke. But I mean, I was wrong on that. So I don't know. I'm going to do another deep dive on him like you, Brian. So we'll see. But I mean, I'm excited about it because end of day, it's like, if you want it upside, you got it, you know?
Yeah. Williams at least had the, like, you know, he started gathering steam like once workouts started, because no surprise, like he's obviously that guy's made of granite. You know, he's a terrific athlete, you know, did well at the combine. And then once people got him in for workouts, it was no surprise. Like there was, I mean, it came to fruition too, but there was definitely like a reality where like he was going to start to climb because he was going to do well at workouts and he fit a physical profile and that sort of stuff. And I don't know. I feel like that wasn't quite the same thing here, though. I see where you're coming from, though. Dillingham at 8 to San Antonio too.
They're saying that San Antonio's talking trade with Memphis. I think it was Jake Fisher.
Oh, Interesting.
So
Or actually, Shams is saying he could be moved to Minnesota.
yeah,
Whoa.
I saw it from Jake Fisher said that. I don't know if Sham also said. Oh, he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
It's funny. They said that Holland and Dillingham would slide in this draft, but they were selected 5th and 8th overall.
But
Yeah.
I mean, man, I feel like that's just how it goes with the NBA draft sometimes.
It's like,
Never saw Dillingham where he was mocked. Like the top 5 stuff with Dillingham was just didn't make a lot of sense. If he actually goes to San Antonio and stays there, I actually love that for San Antonio.
Oh, I did too.
It was moved. Woj just said that Minnesota has acquired Rob Dillingham. So
what is Minnesota moving though?
Is it like Naz Reid or something like that? That's like the only thing.
No way they would trade Reid for no way.
I just don't know like what assets that they could give up.
I will say the Rob Dillingham, Anthony Edwards. Oh, sorry, Spencer. What were you saying?
Oh yeah, so yeah, I don't have their contract pulled right up in front of me. I just don't know who they. Yeah, I don't know who like Dylan was saying. I don't know who they would move right now to make this work. Exactly, unless it's a future first, it has to be.
Yeah, I guess it would have to. It would have to be.
Are all of their picks tied up with Utah?
Yeah, because of the Gobert deal.
So it's like it like would have to be.
They would have to go to Utah first. Yeah,
yeah, late. And are they a second apron team? So it's like they can't even move those picks to begin with.
I don't. Well, like Edwards, his extension will kick in this offseason. So will McDaniels. I mean, my guess is
Minnesota is not a second apron, not yet. I don't think.
Yeah,
but they're getting damn close.
Because
he was saying.
Next year, Naz Reid is projected to make $14 million. Jaden McDaniels 23, Anthony Edwards 42.5, Rudy Gobert just under 44, Cat just over $49 million. Like, there's it's a lot of money, man.
I hope you enjoyed your Western Conference Finals, appearance because it ain't gonna get better from here.
I will say the Dillingham Edwards backcourt is interesting. It's a lot of offensive skill. I mean, there's two guys that can really like do damage with the basketball. The reason why Dillingham's like floor to me was the top 10 was because like he's just so skilled. Like big, shoot off the catch, shoot off the dribble, can make a bunch of different passes. He can beat guys one-on-one in space. He just gets different spots on the floor. And I tend to think even if he sort of hits like a median outcome, he still can be a 6-man, scorer, playmaker type off the bench, So I really like him a lot as a prospect. I'd be pretty excited if he was coming to to a team that I followed or pulled for or whatever.
I think it's fun because like usually with these outlier type prospects, a lot of people see like, okay, 160-pound guard, and it's like, okay, why are you projected to go this high? And it's because like the skill level is just so high.
Yeah. You're betting on the creation upside ultimately.
Yeah,
like, that's what it is,
And like he is just a phenomenal scorer. And I know Minnesota needed like that long term. Like Mike Conley isn't going to play forever, so he's not like the worst bet. They have the defensive infrastructure where it kind of works with the Timberwolves and Rob Dillingham. And I personally would be really excited. I see that it's like multiple first round picks or multiple swaps. So a 2031 unprotected first and a 2030 swap. So like,
oh my God, what Minnesota just gave up to get this guy. That is just like, that is, come on. That's stupid.
It's so funny. They like just had the ability to trade picks. Like these things like just became like unfrozen. They are
like today
immediately out the window. Yeah, they're gone.
I mean, if they don't trade it now, are they going to be able to? Right. So, so that's another point. I don't know if you guys saw yet, but Zach Edey also just went 9th overall to Memphis.
Makes sense. That Memphis is like lucky he felt like. I mean, I guess maybe not lucky, but like they were gonna if Klingon fell, they were gonna take Klingon. If Edey, it makes sense. he wasn't there. There were no deals, I guess, that got done. So they're looking for a center. And yeah, Edie makes some sense. I guess they're still like trying to figure out what their centers rotation is going to look like, beyond Steven Adams, and Edie's, I guess a starting spot for that, at least now.
So will these picks convey earlier or later than the Bank of America Stadium being built? 2030.
Taxpayers of Mecklenburg County, get ready to get hammered.
Yeah. Oh, brother.
It's Memphis just picked Zach Edey.
Yeah, Edie. Yeah, Edie. It's crazy that he ended up going in. Like, I mean, it's believable now, but it's like if you had told me that like 6 months ago, it would have been hard to figure, I think. But he, he got better. Like he's more mobile than he used to be. He is enormous. He's got serious gravity as a diver. Play drop coverage, put him next to Jaren Jackson, let him play with John Morant. He's got like another pick and roll partner. He can get on the glass. He can pass out of the post a little bit. I don't know how much that's going to be of use to him in the NBA, but it's something that he could do a little bit at Purdue. And he's with it's a good front office and a good coaching staff. So it's like for Edie, it's a great landing spot. Play next to Jackson and play with Morant as your point guard, and with Bane as a shooter floating around. But yeah, it is kind of crazy seeing him be like pretty solidly a top 10 pick here.
It kind of makes me just wonder who is it for? Because like teams in this scenario, sometimes they say, oh, they're drafting to beat let's say the Timberwolves. They're drafting to beat the Nuggets. I mean, I get it because you have Gobert, you have Jokic, you have Embiid. Those are the type of level that the Memphis Grizzlies are expected to face, fully healthy. But it's just I felt like you could have did that in other ways. But I think Zach Edey is effective. They have what it takes around him to make it work. It just it's just a kind of 9 is a little high to me.
I mean, I also am pretty lower on Zach Edey compared to you, Brian. I think that
hold on. I am not like an Edey. I'm not.
Where do you have him?
I'm sort of ended up being like neutral on him, and he was sort of like middle first round grade essentially.
That's what I had.
I'm still like much lower on you guys. I have him like late 20s, early 30s. I just like, to me, it's like the skill set that he has. It's hard for me to see it really translating. I get the size, I do, but to me, when I watch him, it just seems like he's a little bit slow compared to like, players that he would have to, match up against, especially in the playoffs, if that makes sense. And if you're going to be like slow footed, I think like his biggest draw is like his inside game offensively. Obviously like that's been really, really good at Purdue, but when he matches up defensively against NBA level prospects, I think he really struggled in those scenarios. And it's only going to get harder in the NBA. Like the size, I think, is going to be a little bit mitigated because he's going up against such like massive players compared to what he did in the Big Ten season. So it's like, I don't love the fact that he can't stretch the floor either. So for me, it's just the question of like, is he really going to translate?
Yeah. And I mean, like,
Dylan, I think on Edey, I love Edey. He's an awesome player. He's going to be a good player in the league. I really have no doubt about that. But he's just such a matchup dependent type of guy that it's just like you're not going to survive. Can you win 45 games with that guy, 50 games with that guy on as the starting center on your team? Yeah, probably. But you're not going to go deep into the playoffs.
Exactly.
He's going to get played off the floor so quickly. I mean, how many times do we need to see this?
Yeah, exactly. Like
I was watching those YouTube clips on the playback speed 1.5, so he looked a little faster on your screen.
It should also be noted with Edey too, and we talk about this every year with certain prospects. Like obviously he was incredible at Purdue this season. I think independent of system, he was great. Purdue set up this entire thing the last 2 seasons, like post Jaden Ivey, to basically play Edey ball and to like optimize him, 4 shooters around him as much as possible, drop pick and roll coverage, not, mostly having him, deep in the paint, and a team that was dead set on not fouling. So that way he could, he could be on the court as much as possible. You're playing in the half court a lot. So like he really had a thing that was tailored to optimize him, and he played it to perfection. I mean, he was probably like a once in a lifetime kind of like post guy in college. But like it is going to be a little bit different in the NBA. Like he's going to slide to being a role guy, not the sun that everything revolves around. But I do think Jaren Jackson Jr. is a nice power forward to put next to him to maybe cover up for some of those ground bound limitations, on the defensive side of the floor, at least.
Looks like Cody Williams just went off the board here for the Jazz. Let's go ahead and wrap here, guys. If we need to come back on later, I know the second round is tomorrow. We used to do these things where we'd hop back on late at night. Any final thoughts? You want to go around the horn here? Just give final thoughts on tonight. It seems like this 4 p.m. smoke from Kristen Peak was actually not smoke. It was actually something that the Hornets were looking to do. So, Darian, any final thoughts about the Hornets pick here and how they approached it?
I've always asked for a sense of direction, and I feel like this was it. That's really ultimately the only thing I can say. A lot of upside. He probably has, to me, one of the higher upsides in the draft. It's just he has the most obstacles to kind of surpass to get to that upside, but it's there. At bare minimum, I would hope that he could just be kind of maybe what we were hoping Stephon Castle could be as far as just a defender, because he has the high motor, he has the size, he has the physicality to do so. I think it's just a sense of direction, and I think we're tanking. I don't see you don't make this pick to me if you're trying to win within the next 2 years. So unless they're hoping for 2025 to like hit and really change the course of what they're trying to do, to me. That's kind of, I think we just got a sense of direction ultimately. Spencer, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what was just said. Did this surprise me? This much of a long-term vision was going to come this early? Yeah, it does surprise me a little bit, but it's also reassuring, right? Like I think it speaks volumes that the ownership really does believe, in this new GM and this new head coach and in this vision, and they're going to give them a long, long time, right, to let this all come together. And obviously Saloon's going to be a big part of that. And so am I surprised? Yes, but I think this should be very reassuring to Hornets fans because there's real commitment, and I think there's real synergy from ownership down to GM, down to coach right now.
All right, we'll end with Dylan and then Brian.
Yeah, I mean, like Richie, we talked 2 weeks ago about like this draft potentially showing the direction of the Hornets and, how they were going to attack, maybe going about the rest of their roster, whether they saw it as like a rebuilding year, whether they saw it as a year where they're going to be pushing for the playoffs. Selecting an 18-year-old player who's pretty unproven, has a lot of, upside, but, probably isn't going to do much this year, kind of shows me that, brand new GM, brand new coach, they're invested in the long-term future rather than the short term. I think that, Saloon I didn't expect a player like that to be selected 6th overall. And I think it's a fun selection. You know what I mean? Like it's not something that I expected. It gives us, we're going to be able to kind of dive in deep, later on, dive into the film, that sort of thing. And we'll gain a lot from Summer League. Hopefully he plays in Summer League. We'll see. But I'm very excited by this type of draft pick. It's not something that we were necessarily expecting, but, to see how Jeff Peterson views the roster, to see how, Charles Lee views the roster, it's something where, we have a sense of direction, like you said, Darian, like you said, Spencer. It's good to see that because the last 3 years we've been, kind of treading water with a team that struggled with injuries, that struggled with a lot more than injuries. So to actually have something that you can point to and say, okay, this is where we're going to take this team. This is what we're going to try and do with this roster. I think it's overall a positive. Like Saloon, it's hard to really have a take on him right now. But, the take on the team, we'll see what they do the rest of the night. It would be nice to see them take on a contract, add a pick. But, even if that doesn't happen, it's nice to see, and I'm sure this will be echoed in the press conference of some sort, that, it's a long-term building process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys have all laid it out pretty nicely. Couple other thoughts just to sort of fit in. Said this before we hopped on. Like, I am surprised by the Salon pick. I would not be surprised if this guy does return top 5 to 10 value in this draft. Like, the archetype is there. He's shown some stuff already. There's legit upside. So, we'll see. If he was going to be the guy, I still think it would have been interesting if they could have maybe squeezed the trade out, maybe gotten a little something extra and you pick him at, 9 or 7 or whatever, but wasn't there. And that's okay. He really does strike me sort of like as a, if he shoots it prospect. All of a sudden you're going to get to a pretty solid floor already. A guy that, can start, be a team defender, you get block some shots, get some steals, switch around, and help space the floor for your offense. You're going to use him in, screening actions where he's picking and popping. He's coming off flares. You can, either for LaMelo or Brandon Miller, you can sync those guys up a little bit. If he hits, if these other guys hit too, the Miller, Salon, Mark Williams front court, a lot of length in that group, potentially, in the future, if that's your 3, 4, 5, it's interesting to consider that. And yeah, like this was said a second ago too, but like they're going for a top 4 to 5 pick in 2025. Like, I think that should have been that it's what they should be doing. I think that was I think that was always the goal in mind, but this reinforces it, I think, even more that this isn't just like a 1-year microwave rebuild, which was the max that you were going to get underneath previous ownership. And they're looking at least at like a 2-year window, which opens up so many possibilities, right? And maybe they're even thinking, they're thinking beyond that, but all of a sudden, they're going to be a lot more sort of like different hinge points for the Hornets going forward. They've just opened up more options, I think, with what they decided to do tonight, or with the path they're going to go forward on. And I'm excited to see, where Salon fits in next season, if there is any role for him, and where the development goes from there. I think it's going to take some time, though, for sure. But to get a young guy with this size and shooting upside, is not a bad thing to bring in, even if it is a bit of a reach at pick 6.
Can I just add one more thought, Richie, real quick, about this pick with Salon? I think that adding an asset, and that's really how I would highlight what I'm trying to say right now, an asset that is that young. Like, we're going to see him on the court some, in the maybe next season. If not, we'll see it a season after, but he's going to be so young halfway through his rookie contract that he's still going to be just an asset to put in the war chest. And if things do break right for this team, he's a great trade chip too. Like that's the other reason this is like a smart pick for Charlotte. The more that I think about it, he's just a guy. He's a guy that's going to be a huge piece for them, whether it's on the court or making a move down the road. So.
Well, I appreciate everyone tuning in to this live. I appreciate Darian, Brian, Dylan, and Spencer, who's on my phone right now, for all their expertise in the draft. I did not really prepare for the draft, and I definitely did not prepare for Salon, so this was a total shock to me. But hopefully you guys learned something, and maybe you guys can dig deeper into him as a prospect after you guys get off this call. I'm sure we're all going to do that and kind of learn more about this guy, and obviously he's going to be a project. He's very raw. So be sure to give us a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, help that algorithm get our episodes out, more exposure.